be going over Chapter 2 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Why teach financial literacy? It's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep. So this is video 2 in a series of where I'm breaking down Rich Dad, Poor Dad by each chapter and giving you the biggest takeaways and ahas that I'm finding. So if this helps you out in any way, please like, comment, subscribe to my channel, and I'll greatly appreciate it. So let's get started. So Chapter 2 picks up with Mike and Robert about 30 years down the road. Mike is in charge of his dad's empire now, and he's doing extremely well. And Robert has done extremely well through life, and he's actually retired, him and his wife, and I believe he's 47 years old. And we're going to start finding out how in the world he did it. How is he already retired at 47 and making money without having to do a whole lot? He starts off the chapter talking about some of the richest titans in the 1920s era. Apparently they all had a meeting, and then the Great Depression happened, and then he catches up with them at the end of their life to kind of see how it played out for them. Well, it didn't play out well at all. Most of them were all broke. Some committed suicide, went insane. Bad news for them, right? So why did that happen? He goes on to argue that if we're not educated, it doesn't matter how much money we have, but if we don't have the financial education to back us up, it doesn't matter. It's going to turn out bad as soon as the market goes upside down or other things happen. If we don't have the knowledge in place to adapt to the current climate, then things are going to go south. So he's saying step 1 to be able to live the life that he lived is we have to build a financial education foundation. So if your plan is to build an empire, take over the world, whatever it is you want to do, or just have a nice, pleasant life, then you have to prepare your financial education foundation to be able to support that lifestyle. So if you're going to build, he says, like the Empire State Building, massive, right? It needs a massive foundation to hold up all that weight. If you just put a little 6-inch concrete slab underneath that dude, it's going to crumble, it's going to fall, and it's not going to be a good deal for you. You might make a lot of money, but you're going to lose a lot of money not knowing what to do, right? That was my big takeaway there. So step 1, build your foundation. Get knowledgeable. Study these guys that have lots of money. Figure out what is the base knowledge of that. So he goes on to say, learn accounting, because we have to be able to understand the story that numbers are telling us when we're looking for investments. Because if we can't read the numbers and read the story that the numbers are telling us, we ain't going to be able to tell a good investment from a bad investment because we can't read the freaking story. So it's like reading a book. A book isn't written with just random words here and there, or they're all out of context. The story doesn't make sense. You're like, this is terrible. This is a terrible book. That would be a terrible investment. But if you're only looking at this set of numbers with this set of numbers and you can't see all the in-between, you don't know if it's a good story, so you don't know if it's a good investment. So he's saying, learn accounting. Learn how to read the story of numbers. So now, we have a financial foundation starting to be built. We know we need to start construction on that. So what's rule number 1? Rule number 1 is you must know the difference between an asset and a liability, and then buy assets. But guess what? This is the only rule. This is the only rule to getting wealthy, apparently, is buy assets. Know the difference between asset and liability, and then buy income generating assets. Pretty simple, huh? That's his point. He's saying this is the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple. This whole game is that simple. And a lot of people seem to miss that. I've missed that for a lot of years of my life. I'm like, no, you need to be over here doing this. No, I need to be over here doing this. And instead, I should have just been stacking income generating assets. because over time, the passive income from these assets would have built up greater over 10 years, and we've been good to go. So that's rule one, keep it simple. Now, let's break down what these cash flow patterns and stuff look like. So let's go to the whiteboard. Okay, so remember, rule number one, you got to know the difference between an asset and a liability. And then when you know the difference between those two, you buy more assets. So let's kind of take a look at that. What does that mean? So here on the chart, we have an income statement, or you could think of that as a profit and loss statement. So on the income block, that is money coming in to your pocket. This is good. This is money flowing into your pocket, right? And then on the expense side, this is money flowing out of your pocket. Not as fun, right? So money into your pocket, money out of your pocket. Income statement. Now, what is a balance sheet? Balance sheet is going to weigh the difference between your assets and your liabilities. So assets are things that make you go up in value, and liabilities are things that make you go down in value. Okay? Does that make sense? Great. So, now what does that mean for following rule number one? Well, let's learn how the cash flow will happen when you have income generating assets. So, you have assets in this column now. I have this really cool thing. Guess what? It generates income. So, the cash flows from the asset column into my income column. I didn't do anything extra here, but this is an income generating asset. So it is generating income into my next block. Okay? So that's the cash flow of an asset. Okay, let's take a look at how what's liability cash flow? Here's how it flows. So you have liabilities over here. Whatever this liability is, we'll call it a loan. So you owe on the loan, so it comes out of there, it goes into your expense column and out of your pocket. So we have a liability here. It causes you to have a debt that you have to pay, so now it's an expense, so that money flows out of your pocket there. Now, let's break down the three different types of statements that he goes over in the book. Okay, so here is typically how what he calls a poor person's income statement, cash flow chart will look like, right? So in the expense column, we can see we have the everyday things that people have to pay to live, right? You got taxes, you got your rent, food, transportation, whatever other utilities, stuff you got to pay, period. Everybody has to pay these things. That's in their expense column. They don't have any assets, but they don't really have much liabilities, although they probably do have some liabilities. So typically how it goes is they make a paycheck, working some type of job, cash comes in, and it flows into the expenses because they got to pay those, and then out, the cash flows right back out of their pocket. So this type of person is typically living what you call paycheck to paycheck. It takes all of this to pay all of that, and they ain't got nothing left to do this. And at least they ain't got none of this added to this. So, poor person, income statement. Okay, so now let's take a look at the middle class. What does their cash flow kind of look like? So, the middle class, they have their regular income check come in, then it's going to flow down into the expense column. But what's hanging out in the expense column typically here? So they have their normal taxes, food, transportation costs, everyday living costs, right? But they normally now have a mortgage. They got their school loan payments, credit card payments, car payments. So why are all these other things added here? Because they've built up their liabilities list. So in their liabilities list, they typically have a car loan, you have student loan debt, mortgage debt, credit card debt, on and on. Wherever you've borrowed money that wasn't yours now lives in your liability column. And guess what happens when it lives there? It sends you a sweet little bill every month that comes here to your expense column. And all this income that you're now generating shoots right out the side to everybody else but your pocket. Middle class. They make pretty good money. They build up a large expense list. They build up a large liabilities list. It looks like they're living large, right? But bam, everything they make pours right out the side. So now let's take a look at the rich. Okay, so now let's take a look at the rich cash flow income statement chart. So what's going on here? There's a lot more written up here, and it's because there's a lot more happening. So first, we have things written in the income column besides your typical salary, your paycheck, whatever that may be. So now we have rental income, we have dividend income, we could have royalties. I kind of updated this chart here, so I added mining for maybe you're a Bitcoin miner, a cryptocurrency miner. Absolutely, it's the income. So here's a big takeaway right here. Multiple flows of income, not just one. I have 4 here, but probably at least 3 to 7 is probably what you're wanting to look at there. So now in the expense column, it's a little bit different. We still have our taxes, mortgage, food, typical housing, everyday expenses. That doesn't go away. If you went to school, you still got school debt you got to pay down. Credit cards, if you're using credit cards in any way to fund yourself, they're still an expense. But that kind of wraps up the expense column for these guys, because now we'll shift over to a liabilities column. They still could have student loan debt, their mortgage, and credit card debt. But as you can see here, there's no car. There's a lot of these other loans and stuff are gone because, well, if you have businesses, you can roll those kinds of expenses into your business. And it's a way of shuffling around the money. So you don't have it as a personal liability anymore. It's, you know, it's taking a whack at this dude right here. So now we have all of these assets. So we have real estate coming up into rental income. We have our stocks paying dividends. We have intellectual properties paying royalties. We have crypto for mining, as well as they work similar to the stock market as well. And then you have your business giving you some kind of salary and paycheck and whatever the profit is there, whatever structure you decide to have. So, bam. So now we have all these assets generating for us. A lot of these, we're not doing any work, except for maybe here we're doing some type of work, managerial type stuff, or you might still be embedded within it. So all this flows in. A little bit comes here to take care of whatever flowed up to here. So this stuff still shoots out. But guess what? There's probably plenty of this flow still left over, which will either go into your pocket, but out of your pocket, where is it going to go? We're going to stick it right back up in there and keep building this list out, or making these things stronger, buying more of the same kind of deal. Whoops. So that's how the rich work. Assets come into their income stream, pays down their expenses, and then they have money left over that they reinvest, and this just keeps getting bigger through time. Notice the big difference here? Multiples coming in, and now we're not at equals. So, awesome. Let's keep going. So, why don't most people end up doing this? Doing the rich cash flow chart. Why aren't everybody doing that? Well, here's what the typical American couple end up doing, right? And raise your hand if you've done this. I've been guilty of this somewhat as well. So, you get married, or you come through college, you get a job, and you meet somebody, your income goes up, right? Like, especially if you get married, now you're like, man, we have two incomes. Our income is like, it's going through the roof. So now that you're like, yeah, we're making some money, we're doing really well, we're feeling positive, then for some reason your expenses really just start going up. Why are they going up? Because we're upgrading our lives typically. We're tired of living in that little crummy dorm room or little crappy apartment that we had at school. And we're like, man, we deserve a nice house. We deserve some nice furniture. I deserve a nice car. I deserve a nice dinner. Because I've been working, right? I've been working hard. So, but what is that doing? It is shooting your liabilities column up. And as we know, liabilities flow through your expense column and money out of your pocket. So now, but guess what? These are loans. Like, we've bought stuff and now we owe this to the bank or whoever the lender was. So we can't just dump it. It's hard to just dump liabilities because one, it's not always easy to sell something depending on the market, and two, it makes you go through a decrease in social status. Humans don't like going through decreases in social status, so we can't just dump this thing and get rid of it to make this go away so that our income keeps going up so we can start working on building here in the assets column. So this is the rat race. Income goes up, but we have no business, so we can't write off taxes, we can't write off car expenditures, food, nothing. We can't write anything off, so our expense column just keeps going up. Our liabilities column keeps going up because we feel like we deserve new things, right? New toys, new whatever. It's a liability, so now it's coming in. So no matter how hard we work at our job, we can't ever get this where we need it to be. These just keep growing. They grow equally with your income. And that's the rat race. Then people find themselves in what a term is called golden handcuffs. You make so much money, you're doing well, and you have all this stuff, but you have mountains of debt. So if you're like, man, I want free time, I want my life back, you're handcuffed. Right here, you're handcuffed by your incredible income and life that you're living. Rat race, you're stuck. So, why does that happen? Three things. So he talks about the Japanese, how they have a ideology of the three powers or something. So they believe in the power of the sword, the power of the jewel, and the power of the mirror. And he wants you to talk about this one the most. This is the power of the mirror. This is the power of money, power of weapons, but the power of the mirror. This is you, your self-knowledge. So the reason a lot of people can't get here is because it's not the status, it's not what the masses think you should do. The masses think you should do that. Get the new car, get the boat, get the house, get the kids, get the whatever. Like, that's how you're supposed to live life. You're not supposed to work hard and build up your asset column and then get all the cool crap that you want. But if you're watching this video or reading this book You know that you have self-knowledge. You know that there's something different and the masses probably aren't quite right. And what he's saying is take that power, look in the mirror, and trust yourself that you understand that you need to do this, right? It eliminates fear. People hate being thought of as different and weird because you might be seen as an outcast. But that's life, right? You got to do something a little bit different to break out from what everybody else is doing around you. You have to break out from that to get to this. There's a reason they call the rich the 1%. It's because they're different. They ain't doing the same stuff that you're doing. They're the 1%. They think like the 1%. They do it different. They don't give a crap what other people think. They trust in their self-knowledge. They trust in the mirror. So that was a big takeaway right there. Trust your gut, man. Learn and understand. Follow what these guys are doing. The 1%. Understand what they're doing. This is what they're doing. Rule number 1. Know what an asset and liability is. Buy only assets. Fill up your asset column. Make it pay for your liabilities. So, life is a big game. We hear that talked about a whole lot, right? Life is a game. But in all games, you have to keep score somehow. This is life's scorecard, if you will. We can score life off of money to understand how we're doing. That's his argument anyway. So, this is your scorecard. How many points you rack up in the asset column is how well you're doing at the game. So score some points. Stack it up right here. If you're a competitive person, that should fire you up. Be like, oh, I ain't even losing. I'm trying to get to the 1%. These are the Olympic athletes. They're the best of the best. Build up your assets column. That's how you keep score. And I'll close with what he talks about, how to know when you're wealthy. So how do you aim for a score? What's a winning score? And what he describes is what he calls wealth. What is wealth? How do you decide when you're wealthy? The way you decide when you're wealthy is when the flow from your asset columns completely pays for your expenses. So, in other words, he is saying, you know you're wealthy when you can stop working and your assets will continue to pay for your lifestyle. You will not have to go back to work at no point in time because your assets cover your expenses. You are now wealthy. You don't have to be rich. We're not rich just because we're wealthy. We don't have to be rich to be wealthy. How? Your expenses could be low. We could have real low expenses, but we have a few assets, and these few assets cover our low living expenses. But we can add more businesses and more assets to generate more income, to build more assets, and then we can raise our expenses if we want a higher standard of living, if you will. If you don't want to live in a little tuna can of a house, build this up. So my big takeaway is stay in your crappy dorm room type college apartment, making big income with whatever it is you do, your job, your side hustle, your business that you make. Get that flowing real nice and fat. And instead of buying all the cool stuff that normally goes here, new car, new house, new whatever, instead build these assets. Build it up right here. So download the challenge guide down at the bottom. I got some really good questions in there, and it'll help hash out a lot of this in your life so you can start making an aim, figuring out what is wealthy for you, right? This is different for everybody. Not everybody aims to be 1%ers, but I think most people want freedom in their life, and freedom is bought through being wealthy. Not necessarily being rich, but being wealthy, owning your time. So that's it, guys. Like, comment, subscribe if you like it. download the action guide, and let's grow together. Have a great day.